Yeah, hi guys. Am I audible to everyone? Yeah, good afternoon, everyone. Yeah, so today what we are going to do is today we will discuss fundamentals of programming and the language will be Java. So we will try to cover all the basic fundamentals in Java and we will try to solve all the questions which are given to you. Let's see this part. Like all these questions, we will try to solve all of them so that you get a complete insight of how to write a program. So this will be the main thing. So we will start with fundamentals of programming and then we will try to solve every question one by one. This will be the complete, like this is just an overview of what we are going to do today. Also, you will get a certificate at the end of the course. So yeah, so let's begin. So let's begin with this. So what is actually a program? Like what happens is this, whenever you want computer to perform some task, what you need to do is you need to write some set of instructions for computer to understand and do that job. So let's suppose I want to go from one position A to any position B and I want to find out the shortest path, then what I need to do is I will try to figure out some algorithm. I will try to find out an approach which gives me a shortest path. So in order the computer to understand that approach, what we will do is we will write some sequence of instructions. So the set of instructions which we are writing is called as a program. So let's try to read the definition and let's try to understand one by one. So what is a program? A program is a set of instructions that a computer will use in order to perform some specific task or function. As I discussed, like we want to go from one position to another. Then we will write some sequence of instructions, right, in order to go to that particular position. Same. So these set of instructions make a program. So like we can have multiple set of problems. So in order to solve all these problems, the main part is that we have a lot of algorithms as well as data structures which we can use in order to solve those problems. So let's suppose I want to go from one position to another. So for this, I will have some algorithm which will try to figure out what is the shortest path. Same way, let's suppose we are given some problem like this. So let's try to discuss this. Let's suppose there is a woodcutter. Like you are given a woodcutter and you are given some set of trees and every tree is having some particular height. Let's suppose these are the heights of the tree. And you need to find out the minimum height at which a cut should be made so that you are getting some amount of wood. Let's suppose the height of this tree is 2. The height of this tree is, let's suppose, 4. Height of this tree is 3 and height of this tree is, let's suppose, 1. If I make a cut at this particular height, how much amount of wood I will get? I will get 2 amount of wood from this tree. I will get 1 amount of wood from this tree. So now the problem here is that I want to find out a minimum height. So in order to find out a minimum height, I need to use some algorithm which will try to solve this problem. So the main thing is that whenever you are solving a problem, then you will be given actually a story. Like if you see here, you are given a woodcutter, you are given some heights of trees, you want to cut these trees in such a way such that you get some amount of wood. So in order to break down this story into a program, the main thing you need to do is you need to break this problem into smaller problems and then try to write the logic. So the logic building comes under problem solving. Like how to solve a problem, we will try to break it into smaller tasks and then figure out what algorithm we can use. So there are different algorithms to solve a particular problem. Only thing is we need to identify what algorithm will be used in this situation. So is this point clear to everyone what I'm trying to say? Like, we are given a set of, let's suppose we are given every problem. The main goal will be to break down a problem into smaller tasks and identify which algorithm or which data structure could solve that problem. So these things you will come understand under, like you will learn under problem solving. Like while solving a problem, you will identify, okay, this problem can be solved using some algorithm. So we will discuss a lot of these algorithms in the main course which we will have. So currently this is about how you can solve a particular problem. So let's try to begin with the basics of Java. Like, so in Java, we can have some reserved words. Let's suppose in Java, what you have is, let us try to look about a basic Java program. So you can see there are some words which are written in red. So these words are actually called as keywords. These words are reserved in Java. They are reserved specifically for Java because they have a different meaning. Like public is an access specifier. It will have some meaning in Java. Same way class, static, void, these things will have a specific meaning. They are having a special meaning. You can't use them anywhere. So we will understand all these words later on in the course. And for current scenario, public is a keyword, class is a keyword, static is a keyword, void is a keyword. All these words are keyword. Why they are called as keywords? Because they are having a special meaning in Java, right? So let's try to understand what are the types of, like one we have keyword and one we have identifiers. So what are identifiers? Let's suppose you have a class name, you have a variable name, you have a method name. You can have multiple symbols which can have some particular name. So they come under identifiers. Let's suppose if you look at this program, the main, this word is a identifier, right? This in, it is a identifier. It can have any name. So any name which is given by any user could be a identifier. So let's suppose that you are trying to create some variable. So what is actually a variable? Variable is a container which will hold some value for you. Let's suppose you are having a jar and you are storing some quantity or some type of value into it. So that container or jar is termed as a variable, right? So we will learn about variables and other things in the next slide. So let's first understand how to write a basic program, like the basic program of Java. So first of all, we are having a file which is main.java file, and we are giving the same name, like class should have the same name as the file which you are creating. So let's understand how to print something. Like this is a main function. In Java, every execution will begin from main function, right? Is this point also clear to everyone? Like all the execution will definitely begin from the main function. So let's understand how to print something. So for printing, we are having some special class in Java. There is a class called as system class. From system class, we can print something. So let's suppose if I write system.out.println. So this will help us to print something, and all of you, what you can do is you can try to run on all the programs on this online editor. Like this will try to run your program and give you some output. So currently I've selected the text mode. I can provide some input here and I will be getting output on this part. So let's suppose if I try to run it, then you can see it is printing hello. So let's try to understand this thing. Like there is two types of, like there are two cases. If I write system.out.println or I write system.out.print, then what is the difference between them? system.out.println will try to move the cursor to the next line. So let's suppose if I print system.out.println and I print hello through it, and I again print hello. So what will happen? Both the hellos, they will be printed in separate lines. But let's suppose if I use system.out.print, then what will happen? It will try to print them in the same line. Like you could see one hello is printed in this line and the other hello was also printed in this line. So I hope the difference between system.out.println and system.out.print is clear. System.out.println will try to print or move the cursor in the next line. So what will happen is, first of all, hello will be printed, then cursor will move to the next line, and then hello will be printed in another line. So what will be the output of this program? It will try to print hello 2 times, which are separated in different lines, right? Is this part clear to everyone? Then what more things we can have? Let's suppose if I print something as, so if I try to print it, what will be the output? Now I have written a space here. So these two words, they will be separated by spaces, and everything which you want to print, you will try to print using double quotes. Let's suppose if I don't write double quotes here, what will happen? It will give me a compilation error. Like what happens is, when you try to run a program and the program will get compiled, there is something called as a compiler which will check line by line whether your program is correct or not. So there are some rules. Like what we are doing is, like we are writing a program. So program is based on some rules. Like Java has specified some rules. You need to follow that rules. Like you can't just write something like this. Like if you write hello world, then hello world will not be printed and you will get some compilation error. There is a particular format to write a program. Like you can't just start a program with anything, because Java won't be able to understand this English. But what it can do is, since it is a high level language, it is able to understand all these words together, and compiler will be able to compile them and will give you some output. So whenever we want to print something, those things will be written inside double quotes. Correct? I hope this part is clear to everyone. So if I write here 2 double quotes, then it will give me some error. So this error is called as compilation error. And you can see it is coming because of you have written here double quotes. So what we can do is we can just write this. So it will try to print this. It will print welcome to Java and hello. So let's suppose if I want to print multiple things. Let's suppose if I want to print something like this, that I want to print some value. So if you want to print some value, you will use a plus operator. So this plus operator is actually concatenation. Let's suppose if I write something like this. So it will try to join these two strings and it will print them. So what will happen if we run this program? It will again print the same thing. Only thing is h will be small, right? So this operator, this plus thing, minus sign, this is an operator. So these operators, it is trying to join these two strings, right? So what will happen if I try to print +5 here? So you can see it is printing the value 5, right? So this way you can print anything in Java. So using system.out.print and using system.out.println, we can print anything. So let's try to understand. Let's suppose we want output as this. Like, let's suppose you want output as this. you want to print this double quotes also in the output, then what you can do is, like, how can we do that? Let's suppose if I write hello, then what will be printed? Everything inside this double quotes will be printed, but rest things won't be printed, right? Like these double quotes won't be printed. So what we can do is, how can we print this double quotes? There is something called as escape characters. Like these escape characters behave differently. So let's suppose if I write something like that, if I write backslash and if I write this, then what will happen? So this is a forward slash, you need to write backslash, then a double quote, then again backslash, then a double quote. So what will happen? What compiler will do is, compiler will see, okay, there is a backslash. This means that this character needs to be printed. Like if I write something like this, then program will give me error. It will say that compilation is not successful, as you can't write double quotes, then you can't write hello directly, right? So what we need to do is, we need to write escape characters. This backslash, what it will do is, it will tell the compiler to behave differently. Like it will tell us that this character needs to be printed. Like this double quote function is changed. Double quote was telling that, okay, everything inside double quotes need to be printed. But when we are writing a backslash here, then its working will change. It will not behave in the same way as it is. Is this point clear to everyone? Like what I'm trying to say is, using this backslash, what will happen? The working of double quotes will change, right? If you see here, I am using double quotes, right? Like we can write, so these are double quotes, and what are single quotes? Like this is double quote. These will be single quotes, right? Is this point clear to everyone? Like the difference is clear? Yeah. So what will happen is, now what will be the output of this program? If let's suppose if I try to run it, now the behavior of this double quotes will change, right? So what will happen? It will print hello as we required, right? We required hello with double quotes, so it is able to print that. But if I am writing something like this, then it will not be able to print, because Java has a rule. What is the rule of Java? That everything inside double quotes will be printed, right? Let's suppose if I write anything here, then it will be printed. But in order to overcome that rule, if you want to have another rule, or you want to overcome that rule, then you will use something called as escape characters. Like if I write backslash followed by double quote, then the working of this double quote will change, right? So if we try to print it, we can print this. So this way escape sequences will work. There are different escape characters also. Let's suppose if I want to print everything in different line, let's suppose I want to print few words in different line, but I don't want to use system.out.println. Like let's suppose I want to print hello, then I want to print, let's suppose I want to print good afternoon here, and I want to print them in different lines, then I can write system.out.println. So using this, everything will be printed in different lines because you are writing system.out.println. But let's suppose I want to do it using a single system.out.print. Then what we can do is, I can write something like this. So what will happen now? You can see again there is a backslash, right? Every one of you is able to see that here is a backslash. So what is the meaning of this backslash? Like this backslash tells that there is a escape character. So this escape character will have a different meaning. Let's suppose if we are writing /n, it will try to print a new line. If we are writing something like this, let's suppose if I write slash of double quote, then what will happen? It will just print the double quote, right? So if we try to see that what will be the output of this part, and let's ignore these lines. So you can see, right? Like if you write 2 times /, then these lines will be ignored by the compiler. Like these are called as comments, and these lines are ignored by compiler. Compiler will not read these lines. Like it will just directly skip it. So if you try to run only this line, all of the other lines will be skipped. As we have written a /, like 2 times we are writing a /. So writing 2 times /, the part or this part will become comment, right? So what will be the output of this program? It will try to again print hello, then it will print good afternoon in a different line. Why? Because you are having /n here. Because of this /n, another line will be printed, right? I hope this point is also clear that /n is printing a different line, and it is a escape character, because if we read about here in Java, every character which is preceded by a backslash will be a Java escape sequence or escape characters, right? Like as we saw here, /n, it will become an escape character and it will have a different meaning. Same way you can have another escape character, like if you try to print /t, like backslash followed by t, so it will print tab space, right? Let's suppose you want to output tab space, you can write /t and it will print tab spaces, right? I hope you have heard about tab, like it is a key in your keyboard, right? So you can see hello, it is separated by a tab space, right? Again, good afternoon, it is separated by a tab space. So this is about escape characters. Then what we can do is we will read about operators and variables. Let's first try to solve the first, like the second module which is given to you, which is intro to programming, right? So let's try to solve it. The first question which is given to you is this, in which you want to print 2 lines, hello world and hello Java. So you need to make sure that you are printing them correctly, right? You need to print full stop also. You are printing them second in different lines. Let's suppose if I print them in same line, then what will happen? It will give us wrong answer, right? So let's try to write the program for this question. So let's suppose if I directly write system.out.println, and if I write hello world, like we can say we need to write exact this hello world, and then we need to write hello.java. If I try to run this program, you can match that it is printing the same thing. It will print hello world and hello Java. So you can try submitting this question on this portal also. So this way we will discuss every question like which is given to you. We will try to cover them up. So I hope this question is clear to everyone. We just want to print these 2 lines, and we want letters also in the same case. Java is case sensitive. Like it will treat uppercase and lowercase differently, right? So if you write something like system.out.print, this system is different from this system, right? Like the capital one, you can see capital word, capital system, it is having a separate meaning, but this system will not have any meaning because Java is case sensitive and it will treat uppercase and lowercase characters differently, right? So you need to output the code in this way only. You need to take care of commas as well as the full stop, and you are printing them in different line, and you can try submitting it. If you are writing them correctly, then only the test cases will pass. And if you're not writing, then test cases, like if you're writing, let's suppose if I ignore this full stop, then test cases will not pass, right? So the meaning of case sensitive is that it will treat uppercase and lowercase letters differently. Let's suppose if I write something like this, then what will happen? It will not be able to print, it will give some error. Why it will give error? Because the S of system should be capital. It should not be small, right? Also, printing is not taking any memory. We will see that, we will learn about memory management, how Java handles memory management, what is stack memory, what is heap memory. Those things we will learn in the main course. And currently, printing line is not taking any amount of memory, right? So if we want to print something, we will write S as capital and all these letters should be lowercase. If you make any of the letters in uppercase, then you will get compilation error. I hope is the difference between case and like the meaning of case sensitive is clear, right? It we you need to write lowercase characters and uppercase characters same way. Like you need to understand that if you write S capital here, then it will be treated differently, and if you write S small or S in lowercase, it will be treated differently, right? So let's go to the next question. In this question, what you need to do is you just need to print 5 stars horizontally, and these stars are separated by spaces. Like there should be a space separation. Like you need to print them space once, one star, then space, then star, then space. So what code you can write here? Like first of all, we need to print all the stars which are separated by some spaces. So we can print them in this way. So this will try to print all the 5 stars which are separated by spaces in a single line. But then we need to print 5 stars vertically. So how can we do that? How can we, let's suppose, what one way could be that I could do it using this. I could write system.out.println. Then I could write star. And then I could print it how many times? So every line it is ended with a semicolon, right? If you don't write this semicolon, then you will break a rule. Every line ending is denoted by the semicolon. So at the end of every line, you should definitely write semicolon. And if we print stars 5 times, so we can see what will be the output. So all the stars, they are separated by one line, right? But you are doing it with 6 system.out.println. How can you do it using one system.out.print? How can we do that thing? Like this is the first approach. Like there could be many approach to solve a particular problem. Like currently we are having this as a first approach to solve this problem. What could be other ways to solve a problem? Like we can say this is our first approach, approach 1. Then what could be another approach? How can we do it using system dot out dot print, we can simply print all the stars, like horizontal stars I can print. So now the main point is that I want to go into next line. So if I want to go into next line without system.out.println, I can use \n, right? So this \n will try to print a new line. So the main point is that if you are aware of escape characters, then only you will be able to think about approach 2. So we can use this and then we can print 5 stars, right? So we can print it 5 times. Like this will be the first, this will be second, this will be third, this will be fourth, and then we can print the 5th star. So this will also produce the same output. Like this approach will also give us the same output as the previous one, right? It will try to print 5 stars vertically and 5 stars horizontally, right? I hope both the approaches are clear, right? So if you miss the session, you could watch the recording, like it will be uploaded. You can watch the recording. So till now we discussed about system.out.println, system.out.print and the escape characters, right? So you can solve both these questions using either of the approach, and when you will click on the submit button, then what will happen? It will pass all the test cases. It will try to check whether your program is correct or not, right? So you can try to submit them. So on the portal, you can like print this part is providing you some input. This part will provide you some output, right? If you try to run it, then you will see you are getting output of the program which you wrote, and then you can submit in order to check whether it is passing on all test cases or not. Correct? So using system.out.print only in one line, you can solve both the questions which are given in intro to programming module. So you can try these questions, correct? So let's try to move to the another module. So this is more efficient, right? Like we are just writing one line and using a single operation. Like what will happen is that when this program will run, it will only do this one operation and it will solve the problem, right? What was the problem? The problem was to print the stars, and we are doing it in a single operation. If we are using loops, then we are doing multiple operations, right? So we will see loops also today in this session only. So if you are not clear about loops, you can watch that part also. But loops will take more operations, and we will try to understand how many operations a loop will take. It depends upon how many times a loop is running, right? So this system.out.println, it is a single operation. Like it is just one line and it will do one operation and it will solve a problem, right? So this way is more efficient, correct? So I hope you will be able to solve this intro to programming module by yourself. You can try doing it with both the approaches which we discussed. Try to do it by one approach, then try to do it by other approach, right? Don't mix up both the approaches, right? If you print both the approaches, then it will give wrong answer. Try to do one approach at one time, right? So let's try to discuss this part. So let's try to discuss about data types and variables, right? So let's suppose you want to store some number. You want to store some data into the program. Like what I want to do is, let's take an example of a calculator. All of you might have used calculator. So if in calculator you add 2 digits, it gives you some output, right? If you try to add these 2 digits, you will get this as output on the output screen. So what is happening here is, this is the input which you are providing and this is the output which you are getting. So calculator is doing some operation or some task for you. It is trying to take some input and it is trying to give some output, right? So the main job is of the program which we are going to write here. it will try to take input from here and it will try to give some output. So it works as a calculator works. So every time when we want to give some input, we want to store it into the program. Let's suppose I want to add two numbers. We are given two numbers and I want to add them. So first of all, I want to store this numbers, correct? You need to store this number. So you will require some time and you want to store these numbers into some containers. So how can you do that? So the containers which store some value into it, they are called as variables. So let's suppose I want to store a character, like I want to store this A into this container. Then the data type will be different, right? What is the meaning of data type? Data type is telling you the type of container. Let's suppose that we can understand it from a simple real life example. All of you know about Lay's, right? Like all of you have eaten Lay's chips, then you are having Kurkure, then you can have Doritos. So you know that outside you are having a type, like Lay's is a type and inside it you are having some type of chips. Then inside Kurkure you will have different amount of chips, right? Like the quality will change. Same thing is happening with variables also. Like you are having a container, this container might store a integer value and this container might store a character value. So the type of container will be different, right? Like this will be a integer container as it is trying to store a integer value, and this will be a character container as it is trying to store some character. Is this point clear to everyone? Like from this example, you can remember that based on different type of chips, right? Like if you purchase Lay's chips, outside the container is different and the material stored by container is also different. Same way is happening with data types also. Like you can have data types has integers, as characters. So we will try to understand all these data types. But I think the concept part is clear to everyone that there will be a container and that container will try to store something. That something could be an integer. It could be a decimal value. Let's suppose if I want to store 5.0 here, so I can store it, right? So then the data type of this container will change. It will not be character. It will become either float or double, right? So let's try to understand this. Let's assume that here we are having, let's suppose we have a container. So this container will be called as a variable. We created a variable. So what is a prototype to create a variable? Like let's try to understand prototype. So prototype is a way, like it will tell you, okay, this is how you will create a variable. So the syntax or prototype is first you will write the data type, then you will write the variable name, then you will write the value which you want to store it. Let's suppose I want to store some value, then I will write it using equal to operator. So what will this line do is, this line will create a container of type data type. Like data type will be the type of container. It will be having a specific name. Like as you have a container of Lay's, so same way this variable name will be the name of this container and you will try to store this value inside it. So let's suppose if I write something like this, if I write int a is equal to 10, then what will happen? A container will be created. Let's suppose this container is created. This container will be having a name as A and it will be having value as 10, right? So this integer is specifying that this container will store integer numbers, correct? So this is how you can create a variable and you can try to store it, right? So let's try to understand what things are there. Like variable, it is a container which will store some value, and every value will have a data type. So we are having a lot of data types. The data types could be boolean, it could be character, it could be integer, it could be byte, short, int, long. Then floating point is representing the decimal part. So we are having two types of data type which can store decimal numbers. One is float and one is double. Then there are some non-primitive data types which are string. So let's try to understand them. Let's suppose that you want to store a character, right? So I think we can write here. If I want to store an integer value, I will write something like this, right? So what will happen? 10 will be stored. What is the meaning of this line? The meaning of this line is that 10 will be stored in this container, right? Now what will be the, let's suppose if I create some character B and I want to store a value C into it. So this is saying that there is a container B, like there is a container B whose data type is character and it is trying to store a character. So let's understand what is a character and what is a word, right? So let's suppose if we create something like this. So this is a word, like this is a word, it is a sequence of letters. So the sequence of letters, a sequence of lot of letters, it is called as strings. But if you are having only one letter, that one letter comes under characters. Let's suppose if you are having only this letter, it will be termed as a character, right? Is this point clear? Is a difference between strings and character clear to everyone? Character is a single letter and strings is a sequence of letters, right? Or a lot of letters together will form a string. So here we are trying to store a character. If let's suppose if I write CA, then what will happen? It will not work. This program will give us compilation error that you can't store multiple characters into single quotes. If you want to store multiple characters, then you need to write what? You need to write double quotes, right? Because if you want to store a sequence of characters or multiple characters, you will use string. If you want to store a single character, you will use character data type. I hope this part is also clear to everyone. Let's suppose if I want to store some double value. Let's suppose I want to store this double value, which is storing some decimal number. I can store it into this B container, right? So this B container will have value as 5.123. So it will store that particular value. Now, let's suppose if I create a float container. So float will be the type, F will be the container, and we can store, let's suppose we want to store some value, then we need to write F here. So this F will identify that the data type here is float. In Java, what is happening is, in Java, what happens is that double, they are treated, all the decimal numbers, they are automatically treated as double data types. But if you want to store float data types, then you need to specifically write this F. So all the decimal numbers, they are definitely or they are automatically considered as double integers, double data type. But if you want to store float, then you need to use F here. Now what we can do is, let's suppose if you want to print something, let's suppose I print the value of A equal to, then I write A. So what will happen? What will be the output of this program? What will be the output of this program if I try to run it? The output of this program will be a equal to 10. So here a will not be printed. The value of a will be printed, right? I hope this part is also clear. So in double and float, since both are representing decimal numbers, so in order to specify that this is representing float data type, we are writing f. Now we can have long integers. So what is long and what is the difference between long and int? What will happen is, let's suppose if you want to store this much big number, let's suppose I want to store this much big number. I can't store this much big number in integer, right? Why I can't store this much big number in integer? Because integer is having a limit. So we will try to understand the limit also. So it can store numbers in a range. Like it will have some range as -217 something up to 2 into 10 to the power 9, like from -2 into 10 to the power 9 to 2 into 10 to the power 9, right? The approximate range is 217, something like that. But it can only store these integers. So any number, let's suppose we are having any number 10 to the power greater than 10 2 into 10 to the power 9. Let's suppose I want to store 10 to the power 12. I can't store this into int data type because there will be overflow. So we can understand this, right? Like a Lay's packet can have some quantity of chips. If you fill a lot of chips, then these chips will overflow, right? So same way, a container is having a range. Like it will have a limit. Beyond that limit, you can't store those numbers. So long is having more limit than integer. We will try to understand that also, like how the limit is made. So if you want to specify that this number will be long, you will write a small l here. So what will happen that this number, one after one, we are having so many zeros, this number will be treated as a long data type. So if I try to print it, let's suppose if I try to print every number, so let's suppose if I print z, then what will be printed? We will have the value of z, right? So let's suppose I write one more zero and I print it like this. So what will happen? Yeah, so we have taken very large value, right? We have taken more than 8 zeros. So what will be the output of this program? It will say, like, it is saying that this number is so big, you can't store it directly because we need to specify that this number is of long data type. So I need to write a L here. So this L is telling the compiler that this number should be stored in long. Is this part clear to everyone? Like if you don't write L, you will get a compilation error. But if you write L, then this big number, one after so many zeros, will be treated as long and we can print it, right? And we can use it also. So let's suppose we want to add two numbers. I can create some numbers. Let's suppose this is my first number. And let's remove this. And this is my second number, right? If I want to add these two numbers, what I can do is, let's suppose I can create a third number which will try to add them. So I can write a plus b. So this plus is an operator, right? This plus is an operator. It is telling the compiler to add two numbers. If you write minus, then it will tell the compiler to subtract two numbers. This equal to is also an operator. This is an assignment operator. And this assignment operator will try to assign this value like the value given by this into this number, right? So what will happen? Let's suppose we are having two numbers. Let's suppose I have two numbers. Both of these numbers are having some value. So if I write a plus b, then what will happen? These two numbers will be added, like 10 will be added to 15. And these numbers will be stored into different or another number c, right? So first addition will take place, then they will be stored into another number c or the third number which we are having, right? So here we need to write, let's suppose I write first number plus second number. What will happen? 10 will be added to 15 and they will be stored in third number. And if we try to print it, yeah, so now third number will be printed. We can see that we are getting the sum of two numbers, right? So these, the symbols which we are having, the mathematical symbols, they are operators, and we will have different types of operators also, right? Then we are having other data types also, like another data type could be Boolean. So this Boolean data type, it is trying to store true or false. It can store only two values, true or false. Let's suppose sometimes if we want to store only two things, true or false, then I can store it into Boolean data type. If I want to store a sequence of letters, let's suppose if I want to store this sequence of letters, then I can write a string data type. Like I can write string, then I will write double quotes. And let's suppose if I store hello here, so this hello will be stored inside this string, right? And we can directly print this string also. Let's suppose if I write, so if we write something like this, then hello will be printed, and from this line 25 is getting printed, right? So this is what is happening here. So these are the different types of data type. We will read about more data types also. So all this like integer, character, boolean, they will take some amount of space, right? Like this container, let's suppose you are taking a container in which you are marking that this container is called as A and 10 is getting stored into it. So this container will have a size. So that size for integer is 4 bytes, right? For integers, we will have 4 bytes of memory. Like they will take some amount of memory also, because all the integers, all the variables which you are trying to create, they are stored somewhere. So they are stored inside variables, right? So they will take different amount of space. So that amount of space comes under what? For integer, the space will be, let's suppose for integers it is 4 bytes. So what is bytes? Bytes is a terms like there is one thing that one bit, it is equal to how many bytes? Or how many bytes? Like if I ask this, how many bytes is equal to how many bits? How much this value will be? So 1 byte will be equal to how much? It will be equal to 8 bytes. One, so 8 bits. Bits is a smaller unit. 8 bits will make 1 byte, right? So how many bytes will integer take? Integer will take 32 bits, right, and 4 bytes. I hope this conversion is also clear. Correct? So same way character is taking how many things? Like character will take 2 bytes, boolean will take 1 byte, then how many bytes double will take? Double and float they take, depending upon, double will take 8 bytes, right? So exact you can see like for what, how many bits will be there, how many things are occupied. Since 1 byte is equal to 8 bits, so you can find out for all these values also. Correct. So if boolean is taking 1 byte, then it will take 8 bits, right? So now let's try to discuss the problems which we are having. Like let's discuss this module 3. So first question is input output in Java. So how can we solve it? So for this we need to learn a different concept. So let's try to learn about it. Like let's try to understand this. So how to take input from user, right? Let's suppose I want to take some input from user. Then what we need to do is we need to use scanner class. So what is scanner class? This scanner class allows to take input from the user. Like let's assume that you have a calculator, right? That calculator is taking input from the user. Same way, using scanner class, we can take input from the user which is writing a program. So all this, they are considered like the scanner class. It is stored inside java.util package. A group of similar classes and sub packages forms a package, right? Like if you see here, if we write here something like this, if I write import java.util.star, like something like this, then what will happen is it will import all the packages which are present inside java.util, right? Java.util, it is having many classes. All the classes are imported into this program. So what this import word is doing, this is trying to import all the classes and sub packages which are present inside it. If I write here java.util.scanner, then this scanner class, it will be imported inside this program. So then I will be able to use it. Let's suppose I want to use this scanner class. So we need to create an object of the scanner class. Everything related to classes and objects you will learn in the main course. Like since Java is an object-oriented language, we will have sessions for understanding OOPS, right? Like object-oriented programming. So we will see in that part. For current scenario, we can see that we are creating an object of this scanner class. So using this line, what we are trying to do is we are creating an object of this scanner class, this in. This is an object which is being created and it is of what? It is a part of scanner class. So for currently, you can understand that using this way, you can create object of scanner class which will be used to take input. Let's suppose I want to take integer input from a user. Then what I will write is I will write in dot next int. So using in dot next int, I can take a integer input from user. Let's assume that we are ignoring this part and we are trying to take a input. And then we are trying to print this value, right? So what will happen? we are taking input as A and we are trying to print the value of this A. So we have not initialized this value. This 5 will come here, right? Because we are trying to input it from the input part. So this 5 will be taken as an input and we can try to print this. So we can see value of A is printed as 5, right? So this way, what you can do is you can take input from an integer. Like if you want to take some integer input from the program, you can write some statement like this. So if you want to input a character, what you will write? Or let's suppose if you want to input a double or a decimal value. Let's suppose I want to input a decimal value. I will write int dot next double, right? So currently I'm not going into the exact detail, right? I am telling you how to write it. The exact details we will understand when we will discuss the classes and objects, right? Because currently you don't know, like some of you might not be familiar about what is class, what is objects. So these things we will discuss later on. Currently we are discussing, we are learning about this, how to take input from user. Because if you are not able to take input from user, then you can't write a program which behaves based on the user input, right? You need to somehow write a program which behaves based on a user input. So if you want to take a double value, you can write something like this, and let's try to print this also. Let's suppose if we are printing this value and we write here 7.8 this. So we can see both the values are getting printed, right? Now, if you want to input some long value, you can write the same thing. Like we can write. So you can understand, right? What thing is changing? Int dot next is same for everything. Only thing is you need to write int this way where I is capital. Then for inputting the double values, you need to write something like this. For inputting long values, you need to write something like this. So let's suppose if we try to print this. So since we have not provided an input, right? What will happen? Like if we don't provide an input, you will see that there is some error which is also coming, that you have not provided a long number in the input. So it is not getting printed, right? So we can see it is saying no such element and it is giving some exception. So exception is kind of an error. So what it is trying to say is that you have not given any input to the program. So let's suppose if I try to give some input, then it will work, right? It will try to print the long part also. But if I don't print this, then it will not print it, right? Because in input, you are not providing anything and you are just running the program. So what will happen is program will say that nothing was provided in an input. So there is a mistake of user. So it will give such kind of error, right? Which was coming before. Let's suppose if I run it, so you will get some kind of this error. I hope this thing is also clear to everyone. So whenever we want to input something, we will provide input here also, so that the programs run successfully. Correct? Now let's suppose if you want to input a word. So let's suppose I want to input a word, right? So how I can input a word? Let's suppose I want to store a word. Then I can write int dot next. So this is used to input a word. And let's suppose if we want to input a sentence, we will see how can we input a sentence also. If I try to print it, Let's suppose I want to print hello world. This I want to store it in A and I want to print it. So we will see that we can input a word, right? But let's suppose if you want to input a sentence, how you can store or input a sentence. You will write here int dot next line. So this next line will be used to input a sentence. Let's suppose if I write hello world, what will happen? It will input the whole sentence. So I hope this part is clear to everyone, right? Next line will be used for sentence, and next, like int dot next, this is used for storing or input, like when you want to input a single word, correct? So the line L should be capital, right? If I write small, then what will happen? It will give compilation error because Java is case sensitive. It is treating uppercase letters and lowercase letters differently. So you need to write L here capital. So this way you can input a sentence, right? So let's try to solve this question. In this you want to take three input integers, right? So how can you take three input integers? You will first write int a is equal to int dot next int. So what will happen? We are creating a variable a whose data type is of integer, and using scanner class, we are trying to input it and store it into a. So same, if we want to input three integers and we want to display it, so what code we will write? We will write for A, then we will write for B, let's suppose. Then we can write for C, and then we can print them, right? So how we can print them? We can write system.out.println A. Then we can print B. So we want to print their values. So if we want to print their values, if I print something like this, then A will be printed. But if I want to print the value, then I will write it without double quote. So if you write it double quote, without double quote, any variable, then the value will be printed. But if you write it inside double quote, then everything inside double quote, it will be printed, right? So from this part, you can understand the difference, that if I need to input also, let's suppose I input this thing. And when we try to run it, what will happen? It will try to print A, but for B, C, it is printing the values, right? But what is the output we want? We want output like this. So what we want to do is we want to print in this way, correct? So you can print this. If you write it without double quotes, then values will be printed. And this you can submit here, right? So this will pass all test cases. So you can try it. So let's move to the next question, which is a star pattern. So let's suppose if you want to print the stars. So currently what we will do is we will try to print it using system.out.println. Later on in the course, we will try to see it how we can do it using for loop also. So let's assume that if we write something like this. So first we want to print one star. So we can write, okay, we print one star. Then we want to print three stars. So what we will do is we will just print three stars. And then we want to print five stars. So we can do something like this. So all the stars will be printed, right? So this way, I think this question you can also solve. We will discuss it using for loops also, like how using for loops we can print it later on in today's session only. So let's assume that if we want to do this question, in this question, what is asked? You are given a temperature in Celsius. You want to convert it into Fahrenheit. So how can we do this? Let's assume that you are given a temperature in Celsius. You want to convert it into Fahrenheit. So the formula is also given that you need to use this formula. So we will input the temperature in Celsius. Then we will use multiplication operator. We will multiply it. Then we will divide it by 5. And then we will add 30 to it. Right? So we will input it using scanner class. We will multiply it with 9. We will divide it by 5 and we will add 30 to it. So this temperature will become in Fahrenheit. Correct? So we are also given that C will be multiple of 5, right? So every time this C is a multiple of 5. So when you are dividing C into 9, then it will be definitely an integer, right? There is no point storing this C in decimal. Why there is no point storing this in decimal? We are given in the question that C is a multiple of 5. So if it is a multiple of 5, C will have some value like 5. It can have 10. It can have 15. It can have 20. Same way it can have 5 into some integer, right? So when we will be dividing C into 9 by 5, this C, this number, like if you understand this way, this part, this will be an integer, right? So this part is an integer, so we can store it in integer only. There is no point storing it into double. Why we are not storing it into double? Because C is a multiple of 5. Since C is a multiple of 5, dividing by 5, it will become an integer, right? Let's suppose if you divide 90 by 5, then what will happen? This will be an integer, right? This will not have any decimal places. Is this point clear to everyone? Is this point clear, guys? Now what will happen is, what code we can write is, first of all, for this question, temperature in Celsius, what we will do is, we can write, okay, let's take a temperature. So we can take temperature in Celsius. So we can have any variable name, like you can have any variable name which you want. You can name it to your name also or some name. But let's suppose if someone is reading your program, right? So for him to understand, you should write meaningful names. Like you can name it something like this, that this could be temperature in Celsius. We can write something like this. And we will try to input it in integer. Then we can find out the temperature in Fahrenheit, right? So let's suppose we are writing temperature in Fahrenheit. So what formula we will implement? As we saw on the whiteboard, right? First of all, we need to multiply it with 9. Then we need to divide it by 5. Then we need to add 32 into it. So first of all, we will multiply it with 5. Then we will divide it with, we will multiply it with 9. We will divide it by 5. So you can use these operators. This operator will multiply. This is a division operator. It will divide the result coming from this part. And then we can simply add 32, right? So using this, we will get, and we can print it. We can print the temperature in Fahrenheit. So let's try to run it on these cases. Input given is 25. So what will happen? We can write input as 25, and then when we will try to run it, you will get output as 77, right? Which is as same as the output which you need. So this code will also pass. You can try this approach. I think this formula is clear to everyone. This formula is also given in question, right? And this formula we are implementing. There is no point taking them in double because C is a multiple of 5, right? That's why there is no point taking it in double. We can do it using integer only. So I think all these questions you will be able to solve. Yeah. So let's try to discuss another module, which is the module 4. We have completed all the questions from module 3 and module 2, right? So let's try to discuss those questions also. Let's try to discuss more concepts which we can see. So let's assume now this program is moving line by line, right? Let's suppose you are given two numbers. Let's suppose I am giving you two numbers 10 and 15 and you are storing them. So both A 10 and 15 values, they will be stored into A and B. What will happen that A will have value as 10 and B will have value as 15, right? So if you want to print the maximum of both numbers, then what we can do is, let's suppose if you want to print these two numbers, then what we will do? Let's suppose now there is something called as condition. Like we need to write some condition or we need to write some logic based on which we will find out which number is maximum, right? So how can we do that? Let's suppose if we are having two numbers, let's suppose if we have two numbers A and B, and how can I find out which of them is bigger? Using operators, right? I can do this. Like if I write A greater than B, then what will happen? This statement, it will return true when A is greater than B, else it will return false. Correct? So this is what operator, like this, I think you have studied in your elementary mathematics, right? Like if I write 6 greater than 5, then it will give us true. Like since 6 is greater than 5, it will give us true result. So now there is something called as conditional statement. The conditional statements are if and else. So let's try to understand if and else. Let's suppose if I write if A is greater than B, then what will happen? If I write A greater than B, then if A is greater than B, then this statement will get executed, right? Or let's suppose if we are doing some task, let's suppose I am doing task 1 and if I am doing some other task here. So what will happen? Currently A will have a value 10, B will have a value 15. What will happen for A greater than B? Like 10 greater than 15, what will be the result? It will be false, right? So if this condition is false, then this task will be done. Correct? Is this part clear to everyone? I think the video is also clear, right? There is no lag. Is the video clear to everyone? So what we are trying to do here, like if A is greater than B, then this task, like let's suppose A is having value as 100. If I pass here 100, what will happen? A will have value 100. So what will happen? 100 is greater than 15. So the output will be true, right? Like this result, A greater than B will be true, and this part will be executed. So based on some condition, like here we are having a condition that A greater than B. If A is actually greater than B, then this task will be done, else this task will be done. So either of the task will be executed, right? So let's suppose if I write here system.out.print maximum is A. So what will happen? What will be printed? And here we can have, let's suppose, since this condition is false, like if A is greater than B, then this part will be running when B is bigger. It will be executed when B is bigger, right? Is this part clear? So if this is a input which is given to you, then what will be the output? We are able to get the maximum value as 100, right? So let's suppose if I write here 150, then what will happen? We are getting the maximum number. So let's suppose that we want to initialize and we want to store the maximum number in some other variable. Let's suppose I create another variable which is maximum number and it is trying to store the maximum number. Let's initialize it with 0. Or what we can do is, let's initialize it with B. Let's initialize it with A. And if I write here, if B is greater than A, then maximum number will be B, right? And now you can print the maximum number. Correct? Now I can print the maximum number. So this is another approach, right? What I am trying to do here is, I will write it step by step. What we are trying to do is, we are trying to assume, we are making an assumption that A is a larger number. We are making an assumption that A is a larger number. If B is a larger number, then what will happen? We will make B as a larger number and then we can print the maximum value, right? Or you can do it something like this also, that if A is greater than B, you are printing A, else you are printing B, right? Is this part clear to everyone? Using this also we can do or print the maximum number. We can make an assumption that A will be our maximum number. Then we can contradict that assumption by ourselves. Like we are writing that if B is greater than A, then the maximum number should be what? Maximum number will be B, right? So if we try to print it, it will print 2 times. Like first, this is getting printed that maximum number is 150. Then this part is printing that maximum number is 150, right? So using this if and else, you can do it, right? Correct? Like using if and else, you can have conditions into the program. What is happening is, let's suppose if your program was running in this way, then your program had a condition. Then either this task will run, let's suppose the condition is true, then you can have, okay, this task will run. Then if this condition is false, then you can have, okay, some other task will run, right? So this way you can have multiple things or you can have multiple flows into your program. Correct? So let's try to see this question. I think if else is clear, then we can also do this thing. Like if you want to find out the maximum number, Java also has a lot of other packages, right? Like you will see that here we are having some packages like this: import IO package, util package. So using this package, we can have other functions also to find out the maximum number. Let's suppose if I want to again find out a maximum number, how can I do it? Let's suppose in C I am finding a maximum number. I can write math.max. So this math.max, it will try to find out maximum of two numbers, right? So you can understand from this part that this math class, it is storing what? It is having a function max, which will return maximum of two numbers. Correct? So if you write something like this, then what will happen? We can find out maximum of two numbers, right? Let's suppose if we are having three numbers, how to find out the maximum of three numbers? Let's try to understand this. Let's suppose if we are having three numbers, and if I want to find out the maximum number out of these three numbers, then how can I do it? First, I can find out maximum of A, then I will again write math.max, right? So what will happen is this math.max, it will try to find out the maximum of two numbers B and C. So what will happen in your program is, let's try to understand this. First of all, we are having three numbers A, B, C. First of all, we will find out maximum of these two numbers. Let's assume that maximum is B. Then I will try to find out maximum of these two numbers. And finally, I will get max of three numbers, right? Is this part clear? We can write some code like this. First of all, it will find out maximum of B and C. Then the maximum of them will be compared with A. Then we can find out the maximum of all of them, right? So let's suppose I enter three numbers. The maximum of them will be 150, and we can try to print them, right? Correct? Is this part clear to everyone? How can we find out max of three numbers? So this we are doing it using math module. This will, what it will do is it will find out maximum of B and C. Then program will try to find out maximum of them with this value, right? So it will automatically give us, using this diagram, you can understand it will give max of three numbers, right? Correct? So how can we do it using if else? Let's suppose if I want to find out the maximum of three numbers using if else, what I can do is I can assume that the first number is the maximum number. Like assume the first number is the maximum number. Then I can write a if condition that if B is greater than A, then maximum number will be B. Then I can again have a contradiction that there is a chance, right, that the bth number could be a maximum. So we will make it maximum. Then there is a chance that like B could be greater than the maximum number. So we will make maximum number as B. Then there could be a chance that C could be a maximum number. So we will make maximum number as C, right? So first we make an assumption, then we try to contradict that assumption, right? So this is building a logic to solve a particular problem. Like we assumed something, then we are trying to contradict it. Like there is a chance that B could be a maximum number. There is a chance that C could be a maximum number. After that, we will be 100% sure that we will get the maximum of three numbers, right? So this way you can find out the maximum of three numbers. So either using this approach you can do, or using the approach which we discussed just now here, like where we were printing with the math module, you can do it with this approach also. So let's try to read this question. In this question, what you are given is, you are given three sides of a triangle, right? Let's try to discuss it. Let's assume that you are given three sides of a triangle. You want to find out what type of triangle is it. So let's assume that we are having some triangle. So this looks like a right angle triangle, right? So let's assume these are the sides given. Then they have also given us the formula that if a triangle is right angle, then twice the square of largest side. So first we will find out which of them is the largest side. So how can we find out that? Using the same code. Like we want to find out maximum of three sides. So I can either use this approach, math approach, or I can use the if approach, and I can find out maximum of three numbers, right? So I hope you will be able to find out maximum of three numbers. Let's assume that maximum of them is C. Then what is the formula? That 2 times 2 times the square of this maximum side, if it is equal to sum of square of all sides, then we can say it is a right angle triangle, right? So we need to check whether this value, like this part, we can call it as a left hand side, and then we can have the RHS, right? So let's assume in the RHS we are having sum of square of all the sides. So we will take sum of is this part clear to everyone? Like if these two values are equal, then the triangle will be right angle. If let's suppose twice the largest side it is greater than the square of all sides, then what will happen? It will be a obtuse angle triangle. If let's suppose RHS is bigger, or the right hand side, like let's call this as RHS, which is the right hand side. Let's call this as LHS. So if RHS is greater than LHS, then it will be acute angle. If it is equal to, then it will be a right angle triangle. If it is greater than, then it will be a obtuse angle triangle, right? So let's try to code this part based on the logic which we have developed on the whiteboard. We will try to code it. So we will have three sides. Let's name them. Let's call this as a first side. Let's call this as a third side. Like let's call this as a second side, this as a third side. Then how can we find out the maximum side? I can use this logic. This could be the first side, this could be the second side, this could be the third side, right? So now we will have the maximum side. Now what we can do is, we will try to find out LHS and RHS, right? What is the formula for LHS and what is the formula for RHS? Let's try to see this. Let's call LHS or the left hand side. Or let's call it as a left part. So the formula will be 2 into maximum side into maximum side, right? Because here, first of all, we assume that C is maximum, right? First of all, we will find out this maximum. If this maximum is C, on the LHS, we will have here the maximum side, right? Here we will have max and max, correct? So when we have the maximum side, then we can find out the right part. What will be the right part? It will be sum of squares of all the sides. So you can read here that here we are having sum of squares of all the sides, right? So that's why I am taking squares of all the sides. So now we can find out the right part. What will be the formula? It will be first side into first side. Is my voice not clear? Like, is it for everyone? Is the voice clear now? Is the voice clear, guys? So what we are doing is we are finding out the left part and we are finding out the right part. Then what we are trying to do? We will have a condition, right? Like we will have a condition that if LHS it is greater than RHS. Let's read the condition. If this is representing the LHS part, so if LHS is less than, then we need to print. What we need to print is, we will print 1 for acute angle, we will print 2 for acute right angle triangle, we will print 3 for obtuse angle triangle. So what we will do is, we can have conditions. So what will be the conditions? That if left part, it is less than the right part, then we are 100% sure that if left part is less than the right part, then the triangle will be acute and we need to print 1. So we can print here 1. So why we are printing 1? Because this will be a acute angle triangle. And what more things we can have? Like, so there is something called as else if also. So what does else if will do? Let's try to understand this also. If this condition is not true, then we will check whether this condition is true or not. Correct? So first this condition will be checked. Then we will check whether this condition is true or not. Let's suppose if left part is equal to right part, then we will have the triangle will be right angle. So for right angle triangle, we will print 2. Then what we will do is, then we can have else. So what is the meaning of else? That let's suppose this condition is not true, this condition is not true, then this condition will get executed, right? So we will try to print this, like 3 is denoting that we will have a obtuse angle triangle, right? So you can see that for obtuse angle triangle, we need to print 3. So that's why we are printing 3. So let's try to run it for this case. 3, 4, 5. So since if heights are 3, 4, 5, then what will happen? So here we need to write left part. Like we have not written left part. So we will write here left part. So if left part is equal to right part, then it will be a right angle triangle. If the sides are this, then it will be a right angle triangle, which you know from Pythagoras theorem also. Correct, that this will be a right angle triangle. So you can try this approach. First of all, you will find the maximum side, then you will find the left part, then you will find the right part, then you will try to check whether the left part, you will try to compare whether left part is less than right part. It will be acute angle, else it will be right angle and obtuse angle depending upon the case which we are having, right? So the condition is also given to in the question. So you can read these conditions and you can build the logic. So I hope the approach for this question is clear. We are just finding left and right part. Then we are applying the condition as given in the question, right? Is this part clear to everyone? Yeah, so let's discuss the next question. Yeah, am I audible, guys? Is my voice clear? So you can try this question and you can try to submit it on AccioJob. Correct? So what we can do is we can discuss this question also. So I think all of you are familiar with the leap year. So let's try to discuss a problem. Like we need to tell whether a year will be leap year or not. So how can we do this part? Let's assume that you are given a year like 2016, it is a leap year. Then another years like 2000, it is a leap year. So how can we find out whether a year is leap year or not? If we try to read out this statement, what this statement is saying that a year which is a multiple of 4. Let's suppose you are having some year y which are multiple of 4s, right? They will be leap year. But there is a condition. What is a condition? That the multiples of 100 which are not multiples of 400, they will not be leap year, right? So you need to understand this condition that the multiples of 100, let's suppose 1900, right? So this is a multiple of 100 as well as this is a multiple of 400, but it is not a leap year. Why it is not a leap year? Because it is not a multiple of 400, right? So what the main logic we can use for this question is that let's suppose you are having a year. Let's suppose we are having a year y. If it is a multiple of 4, then we need to check some scenarios. What scenarios are there? That multiples of 100, like if a number is multiple of 4 and if it is also a multiple of 100, right? Let's suppose it is a multiple of 100 like 1900, then 1700. These are numbers are not leap year, so we need to ignore these years, but all the numbers which will be divisible by 400 like 2000, then there could be other years, right? So they will be leap years. And all the numbers which are not divisible by 100 only, they will definitely be leap years, like 2016, 2020. All the numbers which are divisible by 4, but they are not divisible by 100. So what I'm trying to do is, I'm trying to break this problem into 3 cases. Like, what could be the cases, guys? The first case could be that the numbers which are divisible by 4, but they are not divisible by 100. As you can see that they are not divisible by 100, right? 2016, if you divide by 100, you will not get a remainder. So let's try to discuss this also. Let's try to discuss how to find. Let's suppose you are given two numbers, 10 and 5. So how can you say that 10 is completely divisible by 5? We can say this because if you divide 10 with 5, then what will happen? The remainder will be 0, right? Like all of you know this part, that the remainder will be 0. So how can we find out remainder of a number in programming? Like let's suppose if we are having two numbers A and B, then if I write A modulus B, this will give me what? This will give me the remainder, correct? Is this point clear to everyone? This modulus operator gives the remainder. If you write 10 modulus 5, then what will be the output of this program? Like if I write, let's suppose if I'm writing here, I take two numbers, 10, and I take another number as 5, and if I want to print them, so what will be the output? It will be 0, right? Because 10 is completely divisible. So modulus operator, it will give you the remainder. What is the main usage of this modulus operator? It gives the remainder. Let's suppose if we are having this division operator, then what it will try to give? We will divide two numbers 10 by 5 and it will give me the quotient part, right? If let's suppose A is equal to 10 and we are having B is equal to 5, so 10 divided by 5 will give us 2. But if I write 10 modulus 2, 10 modulus 5, it will give me 0, right? So let's suppose if I write 5 modulus 4 and if I write, so 5 divided by 4 will give you the integer part and 5 modulus 4 will give you the remainder part. So what will be the output of these program? 5 modulus 4 is also 1, and if you divide 5 by 4, let's suppose if we are dividing here, so what will happen? The quotient part will be 1 and the remainder part will also be 1, right? So this is the remainder, this is the quotient. This will come with, if you divide 5 by 4, and this will be 5 modulus 4, right? I hope this part is also clear to everyone. So using modulus operator, we can check whether a number is divisible. In this program, if I write 10 modulus 4 and 10 divided by 4, let's suppose if I write 10 divided by 8, so 10 divided by 8, it will give you the integer value because both of the numbers are integers, right? So that's why they are trying to give us integer value and they will not give us some decimal part, right? And modulus will give you the remainder part. Yeah. So let's try to discuss more things. Now, what were the conditions which we were trying to discuss? All the numbers which are multiple of 4, but they are not multiples of 100, right? They will definitely be the leap year. Now, the numbers which are, if you see these numbers, like these numbers will not be leap year, right? Like they will be leap year. This is the first case. What is the first case? That the numbers which are completely divisible by 4, but they should not be divisible by 100. Then the numbers which are divisible by 4 as well as they are divisible by 400 also. Like they should be divisible by 400. They will only be leap years, right? This case, these numbers will not be leap years, right? This will be the third scenario which we are having. And all the numbers which are not divisible by 4, they are definitely not leap years. So what we can do is, we can check how can we find out which numbers are leap year. Either they are divisible by 4, but they are not divisible by 100. They will be leap years, which I think you can understand from this scenario. Like if we look on to this scenario, the numbers which are divisible by 4, but they are not divisible by 100, they will be definitely leap years. This is the first case. Then what is the second case? The numbers which are divisible by 4 as well as they are divisible by 400 also. Like these numbers, they are divisible by 4, 400, and they are divisible by 100 also. Like they are divisible by 100, that's why they are divisible by 400, right? But if they are divisible by both 100 as well as 400, then they will be leap year. Rest all other numbers except 1 and 2 category, they will not be leap years, right? So what code part we can write? Like we can check this way. Let's suppose that if we input a year, so you can try to read this statement properly. So then you will understand like why we are having these conditions. Like if you read this line and then you try to understand the second line, then you will understand that what all years could be leap years, right? So let's try to write it programmatically. Like all the years, first condition will be that they are divisible by 4, but they are not divisible by 100, right? Let's suppose if I write something like this, then what I am trying to do here, I am trying to check whether a year like this year, if the year is divisible by 4, but it is not divisible by 100. So here we are using AND operator. So how does the AND operator works? Let's try to understand this part also. So let's suppose you are having two conditions. This is your first condition. This is your second condition. And then you are writing AND operator. So AND operator will return true when both the conditions are true, right? जब ये condition भी satisfied है और दूसरी condition भी satisfied है, तभी वो true देगा. Let's assume that this condition is giving some output as true, but this condition is giving as false. So what will happen? The total result will be what? It will be false, right? Is this part clear to everyone? So AND operator works in this way. If both the conditions are true, like T is denoting true, then only it will return true. And when either of the condition is false, it will return false, right? Is this part clear to everyone? Yeah, so we are having different types of operators, right? Like other types of operators could be OR operator. Like you could have OR operator also. So in OR operator, what will happen? If either of the condition is true, कोई भी एक कंडीशन अगर ट्रू है then we will return true. So let's suppose that if this is true and this is false, then the overall result will be true, right? Is this part clear to everyone? Yeah, so same way we can have equal to. So what this is checking whether this side is as same as this side, right? Like the result coming from left hand side, it is as same as the result coming from right hand side. If both of them are equal, then we will say that the final result is true, else the final result is false, right? Is this thing clear to everyone? Same way, if I write not equal to, what will happen? Like if I write not equal to, if this value is not equal to this value, then only it will return true. Let's suppose here you are having 5, here you are having 6. So 5 is not equal to 6. So you will get output as true, right? So these operators comes under logical operators. Like based on true or false, they are trying to result some output. This thing is happening here. So what we are doing is we are checking whether this year it is divisible by 4, but it is not divisible by 100. So what will happen? All the years like 2016, 2020, they will come under this category or this scenario. So they will be leap year. Now what this is the first scenario. Like what could be the another scenario? If the year it is divisible by 400, like if a year it is divisible by 400, then it will be definitely divisible by 4 and 100, right? There is no point checking that part. Like I think from this part you can understand. Let's suppose if we are having 400 or if we are having some year like 2000. So if it is divisible by 400, it should be definitely divisible by 4 as well as 100, right? So there is no point checking them. So if a year is divisible by 400, then it will be leap year. Or if a year is divisible by 4, but it is not divisible by 100, then it will be a leap year, right? So if a year is leap year, then we will print 1, else we will print 0, right? So if a year is leap year, then we are printing 1, else we are printing 0, right? So what will happen here? We have made two checks. Like we can understand the first case. What is the first case or the first condition which we have written? All years divisible by 4, right? But not by 100. They will be leap years. So this is the first condition which I have written. Now what could be the other conditions? The other condition is that all the years which are divisible by 400, they are definitely leap years, right? There is no point checking them for 4. They will be automatically leap years. So we can just say that all years divisible by 400 will be leap years, right? Correct? I think this part is also clear to everyone. So this code you can try and it will pass all the test cases, right? So let's try to revise one more thing, like few more topics are left. I think we have completed 3 modules. Like module 2 is completed, module 3 is done, module 4 is also done, right? You can solve both the questions, leap year as well as which angle triangle. So you can solve it on the portal which is given to you. let's try to, like, we will discuss about loops. First, we will try to discuss typecasting. So what is typecasting? Let's suppose if we want to convert one data type into another, like if I want to convert this integer data type into a long data type, then I can use typecasting. Or if I want to convert long data type into integer data type, then also I can use typecasting, right? So let's try to understand that part. Let's suppose if we are having integer a, this is having a value 10, right? Yeah. So if you are having this value, then what will happen? If you want to convert it into some other data types, let's suppose I want to convert it into long. If I write something like this, then what will happen? B will be of long data type, right? So the value 10 stored will actually be in long. So there are two types of typecasting. One is implicit typecasting and one is explicit typecasting, right? So what is implicit typecasting, which is done by the compiler? So these things we will see in the main course only. I am just telling you that you can convert one data type into another. Like here, a integer data type, like this integer data type, which was of a, long was storing this value. So let's try to print this. So both the values are 10, but the data types of both of them are different. Like B is stored in long data type and A is stored in that data type, right? Is this point clear to everyone? Now what we can do is, let's suppose if we are having long 5, like let's suppose we are having long C is equal to 15, then what we are trying to do is, let's suppose if we store here int D is equal to C, then what will happen? Now this long data type, it is getting converted into integer data type. So here there is some loss of data, right? So if you try to run this program, it might happen that compiler will give error because there is loss of conversion, like there could be loss of data. So when you are converting bigger data type, like bigger data type into smaller data type, then it will be explicit typecasting. So explicit typecasting, how you can do it? You need to specify here the data type you want to convert. Like C is a long data type. You want to forcefully convert it into integer data type. So you will write here integer, right? So now you can convert this, right? So let's try to print this also. Let's assume that we print C and D. So both will have values 15, but the data type will be different. Like data type of C is integer, data type of D is long, right? So here we are converting bigger data type into smaller data type. It is explicit typecasting. It is done by the programmer. Is this point clear? And this is implicit typecasting, right? Like we are converting a smaller data type into larger data type. Why this is larger? Because the long is using more, can store a lot of numbers, right? The range of long is bigger, so it can store a lot of numbers. So that is the main difference. Like here we are converting a smaller range data type into a larger range data type. This is performed by the compiler itself, and it is called as implicit typecasting, right? Is this part clear to everyone? So this will be done by the compiler itself. Yeah, so this is about typecasting. You can convert, like we will see that how we can convert different data types, right? You will understand, like in future you will see how to convert integer to character and those things, right? Those things can also be done. So there are two types of typecasting, implicit and explicit, which is like implicit is done by compiler itself. This is done by the programmer. Yeah. So typecasting we have already covered. Now let's try to see if else we have seen. So let's try to discuss loops, right? Like how can we, like this assignment, we will try to cover now module 5, which is of loops. So let's try to understand loops one by one. Like there are a lot of loops, right? Like if you want to do some task or you want to do something a certain number of times, just say I want to print hello 100 times, then I won't write hello 100 times using system.out.println, right? So let's take this example. If I want to print hello 10 times or I want to print hello a certain number of times, I need to do this task. Like this printing is a task, right? This printing part we need to do it a lot number of times. So we don't write it so many times. Let's suppose if I want to print this thing 1,000 times, I won't write it 1,000 times. I will run a loop which will do the same task 1,000 times or number of times I want to do it. So how can we do that part? Let's try to understand it. Let's try to see the syntax or prototype of this thing, right? So what is a prototype? First, you will write the keyword for. Then you will write initialization. Like first, let me write the syntax part. You will write for. Then you will do the initialization part. You will initialize some variables. You will write a test condition. Then you will update like how many times this loop has already run. Correct? Then you will have some brackets. Then you will try to do some task, right? Like here we can do some amount of task. Let's suppose here I am doing some task as this. So this is a syntax using which you can write a for loop. I will just show you how to write a for loop. There are three types of loop: for loop, while loop, and do while loop in Java. You can use any of them based on your needs. So what is happening here is, first, let's try to write a loop. We will create a variable like this. I will tell how many times this loop will run. So this I, we are initializing it from 0. So initially the value of I is 0. Then I will write a semicolon because the format syntax is this, right? We need to write semicolon here. Then I will write the test condition. This test condition will tell me how many times this loop will run. Let's suppose this loop needs to run 5 times. So if I write I less than 5, then what will happen? This loop will be running 5 times. Then I can increment the value of I every time. So let's try to understand this. Like let's try to understand it step by step. Let's suppose I am printing here system.out.print I. So every time the value of I will be printed, what will happen? First of all, in step 1, What is the value of I in step 1, or when this loop will start running? What will happen? I will have a value 0. 0 is less than 5. So this condition is true, right? Correct? Correct. Is this part clear? Then we will try to do this task. After this task is done, then update operation will take place, right? So let's try to print the output. Let's try to see what this is trying to print. Like we can remove the bracket here. Yeah. So first of all, in step 1, I value is 0. I is less than 5. So let's write it. I value is 0. 0 is less than 5, right? So this condition is true. As soon as this condition, test condition, it will become false, the loop will stop running. Like what will happen in the next step? In step 2, I will become as 1. This 1 will be less than 5. So this condition is again true. So if this condition is true, we will print the value of I. So what is the value of I? Value of I is 0, right? So you are able to see 0 is getting printed, correct? Same way what you can do is here you can print the value 1 will be printed. So you can write here I plus plus, or you can write I is equal to I plus 1, right? Both will work fine. Both are correct. What this line is doing, it is increasing the value of I, right? It is increasing the value of I and it is storing it into I. This statement will also work, right? You can see this program is running. So what will happen in the step 3? When value of I will be 2, 2 is less than 5. Again, this condition is true and we will print the value of I, right? Again, same thing will happen for the next steps. Let's try to write it for them also. When step is 4, I will become 3, 3 is less than 5, it will print it. Then in the 5th step, I value will become 4, again 4 is less than 5, I will be printed, right? So now what will happen in the next step? In step 6, I will become 5, right? Now this condition will be false, like I will become 5, 5 is less than 5. This condition is false. If this condition is false, then loop will break, right? Is this thing clear to everyone? Are all the steps clear? What is happening, like step by step? So every time when the I value is 4, it is getting printed. And when I becomes 5, the loop will break or it will stop. Is this thing clear to everyone? So first we initialize the value of I, then we write the test condition, then we write the update expression, right? This is a format which we follow to write loops. This is how you can write loops and this is how they work. Like first you need to initialize them, like initialize the variable. So using I, we are telling the compiler like now don't run forward, right? When I value will become 5, then we will stop or loop will break. This is a main point which you need to understand regarding loops. Is this point clear? So let's suppose if I print here hello. So what will, how many times hello will be printed? So how many times hello will be printed if we try to run it? Now you are able to see 5 times it is printed, right? So you can see from step 1 to step this, every time the I value is not printed, but hello will be printed, right? So this loop will print 5 times. If I run it, if I make changes 10 here, then it will print it 10 times, right? So loop help us to do what thing? It will help us to do a task many times. Like I want to print this a lot of times, so I can just change one variable. Like I can say that run the loop 10 times. So it will be running 10 times, right? This is what is happening. And here if you write I plus 1, then what will happen? All the values from 1 to 10 will be printed. Like in step 1, 1 will be printed, and you can see till 10 we are printing all the values, right? So this is how for loops will work. You can write here I and you can print it 5 times. So let's try to do, so how many operations this loop is doing? We will say that, let's assume that if we write here n and we take n input from the user, like we can take an input from the user and we print this. So if I write here now 4, this loop will be running 4 times, and we will see 0, 1, 2, 3 will be printed, right? As we are printing the value of I. So this loop will be doing the same operation. If you input n, then it will be doing the operation, or it will do the print operation n times. So here this for loop is taking how many operations? Like it will do the print operation n times. Correct? So if this step is clear, we can discuss other loops also. What will be the other loop? Like if you write here while loop, so what is the syntax for writing while loop? First, in the while loop, you write test condition. Then here you will write the initialization. So these steps will be same, right? You will understand that how for loops and while loops are similar. Then we will have two brackets. Then we will do some task, and then we will have the update expression or update part, right? So if we see what will happen, if I say int I is equal to 5, or it I said, let's assume j is equal to 0. So this is my initialization part, right? I'm initializing a variable. Then I am writing j is less than n. So this is what? This is the test condition which you are writing. Then you will do some task which you want to do a lot number of times. And then we will have the update expression. So you can write something like this, right? So using this statement also, things will be updated. So what is the main difference between while loop and for loop? Only this, the way of writing is different, right? In for loop, we are writing it in this way. Let's suppose if we are having something like this. For loop, we will write in this way. While loop, we will write in this way, right? Only thing is the initialization, the places at which you need to write will change. Rest everything will remain same, right? So let's suppose if I write output here, hello. So how many times hello will be printed? If the value here is 4, so how many times hello will be printed? So hello will be printed, like this loop will also run the same number of times. We can write the steps for this also. So hello will be printed 4 times, right? So let's try to write the steps for this program also. In the first step, we will have j is equal to 0. If j is equal to 0, then j is less than n, because n is having a value what? N is having value 4. So j less than n is true. Like j less than n is true, as 0 is less than 4. Correct? So then hello will be printed. Now what will happen in the next step? If j is having a value 1, then j will be less than n. J will be less than n. It is 1 is less than 4. And it will also be true. Again, we will do the printing part. So same way will happen on other steps also, right? Like in step 3. In step 3, j will become 2. Why value of j is increasing? Because we are increasing 1 here. Like we are incrementing it one time. Is this point clear to everyone? Like because of the update expression, j is getting incremented one time every time. Like every time it will increase by 1. So 3 is less than 4, but what will happen in the after this step? Like in step 5, what will happen? We will have j is equal to 4. Now 4, j less than n. This condition will be 4 less than 4. So this will become false, right? So if these conditions become false, what will happen? The loop will stop, right? It will not do the printing part. Like here, it will do the printing part. For the first 4 operations, it will do the printing part. But in the next operations, it will not print anything. Is this thing clear to everyone? Is this thing clear? Yeah, so what we can do is using while loop also we can do the same thing. Like while loop is also doing like a same task which is done a lot of times. Yeah, so now same we will have do while loop, right? So you can use this loops to solve a lot of problems. So let's try to discuss one of the problems. Like let's try to see how we can like solve a problem nicely, right? Let's try to understand this. Let's suppose if you want to find out sum of some integers. So if you want to find out sum of all integers from 1 to n, so how you will be able to do it? Like let's suppose user is giving you n and you want to find out sum of all numbers from 1 to n. So how can we do it? So we can write a loop, right? Like we can write some loop. Let's try to write a loop in order to find sum of all n numbers. Let's suppose n is given as an input and we want to find out sum of all n numbers. So we can have a variable sum. Like here you can have I plus plus, it will also increase the value of I. Or you can write I is equal to I plus 1, right? So what we can do is we can start the loop from 1 also. We can go till n and we can add it into the sum, right? Is this part clear? What I am trying to do is I am initializing sum as 0, then I am adding every time I into the sum. So what will happen? Let's assume that n is having a value 4. Let's try to understand this. Let's assume n is 4. What we want to do is we are having a value sum. So this sum is having value as 0. Then we are adding 1. Initially I will be 1, right? At the first step I will be 1. So 1 will be added into the sum. So what will sum become? Sum will become 1. Again when I will be 2, this will be added into the sum. Sum will become 1 plus 2, it will become 3, right? Again when I will become 3, so this value will be added into the sum. Sum will become 6. When I will become 4, this will be again added. So it will become as 10, right? So this is how this loop will be working. Like in every step, I value will be added into the sum. So let's assume that if I provide input as 4, what will be the output of this program? It will be 10, right? Correct? Is this thing clear to everyone? Now, how much operations this while for loop is taking? This for loop is taking n operations. So this is a first approach using which we can solve it. What could be the other approach to solve this problem? Like if we try to discuss it mathematically, like in 7th or 8th standard, you might have heard about this formula. Like this is a basic formula. What is the sum of n natural numbers? If you are having n natural numbers, then what will be the sum of n natural numbers? It will be n into n plus 1 divided 2, right? So let's assume that if we are having 4 numbers, then what will be the sum? It will be 4 into 5 divided by 2. So I can have some other approach. Like this is the approach 1, where we were doing it using loop. Now we can do it using formula also. Let's assume that if I create a variable sum, and if I write n into n plus 1 and I divide it by 2. So if you see now, sum will again be the same, right? Is this point clear? It will be again 10. So which approach is more efficient? Approach 2 is more efficient, right? Why approach 2 is more efficient? Because it is taking just one operation and it is finding out the sum. But this is taking n operations, right? Is this point also clear to everyone? Like this for loop will run n times. All the loops are same in terms of time complexity and memory, right? All the loops, they are having same amount. While loop, for loop, do while loop, they are having same amount of time complexity or memory, and their efficiency is same. Is this good part clear to everyone? Like we can find out sum of all natural numbers using this formula also. Sometimes the sum can be large. So what you can do is you can take n as long also. If let's suppose your test cases are failing, then what you need to do is there can be a scenario that sum is so much big that you can't store it in integer. So if you can't store it in integer, you can take long also. Like you can take n as long and then you can try to store it. Then test cases will pass, right? Yeah, so you might have a Google form. I think is some Google form, right? You can fill that Google form. So are you able to find the Google form? You can fill it, like the Google form which might be provided. Yeah, so they will paste the Google form. Like, yeah, so it will be sent in chat. Yeah, you will find out in chat and description. They will add, right? So we can discuss till then. We can discuss do while loop, right? Yeah, so we will just start it. I have told them to share the form. Yeah, they will. Yeah, so they will pin the message. Like they will do it in a while. Yeah. So currently it is not added. It will be added sooner, and you will be able to find it, right? Yeah, they will post the form in chat and they will pin that message. Yeah, so till then we can discuss do while loops, right? So what is the main difference between while loop and do while loop? Like in do while loop, what is the syntax? The main syntax is that first we will have the initialization part, then we will have do keyword, then what will be there? Then we will have some brackets. Then at the last we will have a while, which will have a test condition, right? So what is the main difference between while loop and do while loop? That do while loop will run one time for sure. Like it will be definitely it will run for one time. Let's suppose that if I try to write a do while loop, so initialization it will be as same as writing int I is equal to 0. We are initializing I as 0. So this we already discussed. Then what will happen? We can have a do keyword. Then we can have a while condition. So inside that we will write some test condition. And here we will have the update part. And inside the curly braces which we are having, we will do some task. So let's suppose if I want to print something, let's suppose I print hello and I am writing this. So how many times hello will be printed? If we try to run this program, n is provided as I think 4. So you can see that n will be printed more times, right? Here, what we have not done is we have not written I plus plus, or we have not incremented the value of I. So since we have not incremented the value of I, it will print a lot number of times. So we need to increment the value of I, else it will go into an infinite loop. Like there will be an infinite loop and the program will be stuck into it. So we need to write I is equal to I plus 1. This will be the update part. Like we are updating the value of I so that loop is able to stop. Then we can have a test condition. Then here we can have the initialization part, right? So now hello will be printed how many times? So we can see, right, like every time we can print the value of I and we can write step by step like what values of I are there and what condition is happening here, right? Let's suppose if I try to write it step by step. In step 1, what will happen? I is 0 and I will be printed. Then I will be incremented, right? Like condition check will be taken afterwards. First printing will happen, then condition check will be done. So let's suppose if n is 0, then also this loop will print one time, right? Because it will try to print 0 value. We can see it is printing 0 value, right? So this loop will run for at least one time. This will happen for sure, right? Is this thing clear to everyone? Like do while will run or at least one time. But while loops and other loops, they were not running at least one time. They will run as specified in the test condition. In those loops, what happen is, like what is happening that first test condition is checked, then printing part is done. And in other codes, what will happen, like in do while loop, what will happen? First printing part is done, then update condition will be done, then test condition will be done, right? So this test condition is done later on, correct? So you can see that if you input n0 also, then also do while loop will print, but other loops will not print, right? Let's suppose if I write a for loop which is running for the same value. Let's suppose if we are trying to print this, then how many times it will be printed? Like this loop will actually not print anything because test condition is happening before, then in do while loop test condition is happening afterwards, right? So this loop will not print anything, but this loop will print one time, correct? And if we try to see something like that, let's suppose if we output 2, then we can see that, right, if we try to print here, both the loops will try to print, right? Yeah. So I hope do while loop is also clear to everyone. The main difference is that you can try running on this test case, like you can try and running on 0, and this loop will be printed, like it will do one more time. It will just print one extra time, right? Because it needs to be executed. Is this thing clear to everyone? Yeah, so you can solve these questions. Like you can try solving quadrants question. So quadrant question you can solve it using if else. So let's try to discuss these questions also. So we know, right? Like let's suppose if we are having some graph. Let's suppose this is a kind of graph we are having. This is a y-axis and this is x-axis. So if here what is the case that all the numbers which are lying on this part, they will have positive value of x, and all the values here they will have positive values of y. So if both x and y are positive, then it will be in the first quadrant, correct? Then if the values of x are negative but y are positive, then this will be the second quadrant. If both x is negative, like x is negative in this case, or if you go towards left hand, then x is negative. If you go downwards, y is also negative. So this will be your third quadrant. And if x is positive, y is negative, this will be your fourth quadrant, right? So you are given the values of x and y. In this question, you need to print which quadrant they are lying. Like what is a quadrant number? So how can we do this? We can first input the value of x and y. Let's suppose that if we input x and y, and using what we will do, using some conditional statements, we can do that, right? Using if else, we can do this. So let's try to write it. Let's assume that if we input x and y, if x is greater than 0 or it is, let's suppose, greater than equal to 0, like if x is positive, then what will happen? It will be in the first quadrant. And y it is greater than equal to 0. So both of them will be in the first quadrant and you can output 1, right? Same way you can write out cases, I guess, for other scenarios also, like as we discussed here. Like if when x is negative, y is positive, then you will output second quadrant, you can output 2. For first, you can output 1, then you can output 3, then you can output 4, right? So I hope if else is clear to you, you will be able to complete, right? So this you can consider as a homework. Just try to complete this if conditions, right? Like you can write out a case for greater than 0 and other cases. Just try to complete this code. You will learn about if else. Now we can discuss few problems like how can we do this question? What is a palindrome number? Let's assume that if you want to find out a number which is palindrome, then what logic part we can see is if a number like this, if you read this number from left to right, it is as same as the number you read from right to left. So if this number is as same as a reversed number, then it will be palindrome number. Like this number is palindrome, but if you see some number like 123, so if you reverse this number, you will get 321. Now these two numbers are not equal, right? So this number will not be palindrome, but this number will be palindrome, right? I hope the question is clear to everyone. Like how can you, like what is actually a palindrome number? So you need to write a code for it. Like you need to check how can you find out a reverse number. So how can we do that? Like what do you think? How can we reverse a particular number? what is the main thing which we can do? Like, how can you solve it programmatically? Like, what you can think is, if you are having these three digits, if you want to reverse a number, then the numbers at the unit place in this digit should be present at the hundred place, right? So what we can do is, every time we will find out the last digit and we will try to place it into the correct position. Let's try to run this, like let's try to understand how we will be doing that. Let's assume that initially we have 1 2 3. Then how can we find out the last number? Like, how can we find out this particular number from this number? Like, if n is storing value as 123, how can we find out the last digit? So using modulus, right? Like, you can try to think of in this way, that using modulus you will find out the last digit. Like, if I write n modulus 10, it will give me what value? It will give me value as 3, correct? Like, if I get value as 3, now what I will do is, I will try to maintain a reverse number. Every time in the reverse number, initially this reverse number is storing value as 0. What I will do is, I will try to add this number into this. So first of all, this 3 will be added into this. So let's suppose that 3 is added. So this reverse number will become 3. In the next step, what I will do is, how can I remove the last digit from this number? अगर हमें कोई नंबर दे रखा है, if we are given this number, if we are given some number n, how can we remove the last digit? If I write n is equal to n divided by 10, then the last digit will be removed. So I will be able to find this digit now, right? Let's suppose if I write something like this. If you are having a number as, so let's try to see this program. Let's assume that if I write something like this, and if I write int last digit I can find out using x modulus 10. This will give me the last digit. And how can we find out? How can we reduce the digit? Let's suppose that we want to print all the digits of a number. Let's suppose this number is given to us 1 2 3 4 5. Then if we want to find out the last digit, I can find out x modulus 10. And if I write x is equal to x divided by 10, then what this line will do? It will remove the last digit, right? And this will try to find out. So let's suppose if we try to print this, let's suppose, I think this will be tough for you if you are starting programming for the first time. Then it will be tough for you to understand this part, because it will take 1 or 2 days to understand what we are trying to do. But since you know, right, like what does modulus operation do? Modulus operation tries to find out the last digit, and we are trying to print the last digit here, and then we are removing the last digit. So let's assume that what will happen in step 1. Let's assume x was this number. X was 1 2 3. So what will be the value of last digit? Last digit will be 3. As if you take 123 mod 10, you will get last digit as 3, right? Then you can print it, and then you will try to divide it by 10. So if you divide it by 10, what will x become? Like, what will be the value of x now? 12, right? So now when this loop will run again in step 2, what will happen? Like in step 2, x will become 12, the last digit will be 2, right? Is this thing clear to everyone? So using this logic, you can make it for palindrome number also. Like using this, you can figure out how to write the code for palindrome number. Correct? Is this thing clear, guys? Like the main logic is to remove every time the last digit. And let's suppose if we are able to find out the last digit, I can store the reverse number also. Like how can I store the reverse number? I can initially have reverse number as 0. What I will do is I will write reverse number as reverse into 10 plus the last digit. So if we try to see, like initially this reverse number will be 0 in the first step. Like let's try to write here like what will happen. Let's try to write out what will happen after every line so that things are more clear to everyone. So let's assume that we are not printing the last digit. Initially, what will be the last digit? Since x is given as 123, the last digit will be, what will last digit will be 3. What will be the value of ref? Ref will become 3 because initially it will become rev into 10 plus last digit. Rev is 0, so 0 into 10 will be 0. Adding last digit will be 3. Then x will become what? X will become now 12 because we are dividing it 123 by 10. So when we are dividing 123 by 10, integer part will be retained. It will only have integer part, it will not have any other part. So what will happen in the next step? X will become 12, last digit will become 2. Now here is a main step that now rev will become rev into 10, right? So initially rev was having 3. So this 3 was at unit place. If I am multiplying it with 10, it will move to the next place. So we will see it will become 3 into 10, 30 plus 2. It will become 32, right? So you can see that initially we started off from this number 123 and we have reversed the last 2 digits. Like we are having 32 here, and what we will do is now we will again remove the last digits. X will become 1. Here x will become 1 and last digit will be 1, right? Again what will happen? Rev will be multiplied by 10. So rev was 32. Now it will be multiplied by 10. It will become 320 plus 1. It will become 321, right? So this way you are able to get the last digit. Is this thing clear to everyone? So now a few more things you need to do, like you need to compare the original number. You need to store the original number somewhere else. And then you will try to compare the original number with the temporary number. So first you can understand loops. Then you can understand last digit and those parts. Then you will be able to reverse a number, right? So then you can complete this assignment also. Yeah. So this was for today. Like, I hope these things were clear to you. So we discussed about fundamentals of programming, the basic programming. So I hope you will be able to solve at least module 3, module 4, right? Till module 4 we have already discussed. So you can solve all those questions, and using loops, which we discussed here, the loops, you can solve this assignment also. Yeah. So for any administration related issue, you can ping like in the Discord or wherever you found out the link. Yeah. So this was it. If you are having any doubts, you can ask. Yeah, okay. So if there are no doubts, we can end. So I hope loops, conditional, data type, variables, the basics of them, right? Today we did not discuss them in more detail, but in the future course you might see them in detail. Currently it was just the basic part in order to get you started with programming. And programming is very easy. If you just understand it, it is involving elementary maths, right? If you know a particular concept, you will be able to solve that part. Let's suppose that it is as same as solving a sixth or seventh class maths book. Like if you are able to solve the examples, you will be able to solve the exercise questions. Only thing is you need to know the formulas as well as the concept behind what you are solving. So this is how you can learn programming, and it will be very, very easy. I assume that you will be able to understand it. Yeah, thank you guys for the session. Yeah, thank you guys. Like, just try to revise these topics which we discussed so that things are more clear. And if you are new to programming, just Google these topics. You will understand a lot more about them.